Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tim. This is another Real Ideal Gear review, and today we're looking at the Sugess Chronograph. This watch is outstanding. This is one of the best looking dress chronograph watches I've ever gotten from AliExpress, and that includes the Panda Dial vintage chronograph that I got from there, and a few other watches. The Red Star bullhead design, I love that design. This one is in a class by itself. It is such a classy looking chronograph. I love wearing this watch. My wife loves the look of this watch as well. So when you get that stamp of approval, you're well on your way to wearing something that's really special and great looking. So let's go through the 5 things we typically go through, which are size, fitment, finish, accuracy, and then legibility and lume. So the size of this watch is 40 millimeters by 12.5, and it has a 20 millimeter strap. So the size of the watch, as far as proportions go, it may be getting a little bit close to the chunky side, but that's kind of the way the ST1901 movement treats these watches. You kind of get a little more of a chunky style watch. Things are a little bit stacked up a little bit taller as far as a movement goes, as far as how they assemble this in the case. So you're just not going to get a really slim looking watch when you use a ST1901 movement, from my experience. And so to me, this is not chunky, but it is on the thicker side of things, but it really isn't that noticeable mostly because this dial just takes your attention and you zero right in on the dial. So as far as the size of this watch, it's a great fitting watch, leather strap, has the typical high polished case, stainless steel case, sapphire crystal, doesn't have a lot of weight to it. So really it's in that kind of dressy chronograph category or weight class, I guess you might say. What about the fitment of this watch? It fits great. All the pieces fit together really well. You have a push-pull crown. You have the double pushers. This is really based off of that ST1901 movement, which goes all the way back to that 1963 vintage military-style chronograph. So everything on here is of that era. They've just changed a number of things to make it look more dressy. So I really like the looks of this watch. I really think the fitment of this watch is great. It fits well on my wrist. I have an above-average sized wrist. So proportionally wise, this is one of the best fitting chronographs as far as overall size of the case and height off the wrist. So fitment for me is really good. What about the finish? This is where this watch shines. I mean, in spades. It is incredible. The dial, I'm going to start off with the dial because that's the first thing that I noticed. It is amazing. It has a sunburst dial effect. It's also a fume dial, so off to the edges, it turns into this really dark blue, almost black tone on the edges, which really makes the hour markers stand out. You have this high contrast where the hour markers are, which is where you want them. And then as you move towards the center of the dial, you get these great visual effects from the light play on the dial itself. The handset is slender. When you have a chronograph, you don't want a big handset on here because you've got a number of hands to deal with on the dial. So the handset on here is great. The sub dials for the chronograph is great. The running second at 9 o'clock, and then your time totaler at the 3 o'clock. It all looks great. Now, what I want to pay special attention to is the chronograph second hand. It has a red tip on it, and you know I love a little bit of color on a second hand because it just helps separate that hand from the other two hands. But the counterbalance on the chronograph second hand is just, I don't know, it's just so cool. It's a little star. And to me, it just adds to the whole ambiance of this watch that has kind of this nighttime look to it. And so for me, this watch has kind of that midnight look to it, that stargazing look. The theme, if that's the theme or not, I don't know, but that's the theme that runs through my head. It's fantastic. I love it. Not a lot of text on here, very minimal text, and it's also subdued. So it's not big bold print. It's very, very light font, and it just kind of blends into the background. So the looks of this dial are just outstanding. Now, what about the case? The entire case is polished. This is a dressy chronograph, top to bottom. There's no doubt about this. This is not a casual watch. You probably could wear it casually, but just be careful with it because it is going to get a lot of micro scratches on it. But if you're wearing this for office work, professional work, formal, it's a fantastic looking dress watch. The pushers on this watch are outstanding. You have a signed crown, and the crown itself has enough grippy texture to it. It's awesome. It's a push-pull crown, but it just looks great. Everything about this watch on the finishing side looks fantastic. The leather strap is also this, pressed alligator, crocodile type skin on it. It is a genuine leather strap, so it's going to get more flexible with time. It's also, like all leather straps, they're going to stretch out a little bit. So if you find the watch being a little bit too tight, keep wearing it on that setting, on that hole on the strap, and you're going to find that it's going to loosen up over time. Now, what about the accuracy? I'm going to pause a little bit on this one. It's an ST1901 movement. There's a lot of conversation out there that sometimes you get bad ones, sometimes you get good ones. And to date, I haven't gotten a bad one. This one on the time grapher, and here's the actual video footage of this, zeros across the board. 0 seconds per day, 0 beat error. I wound it up, let it run for a few minutes, put it on the time grapher, and that's what I got. So I've been getting good, average to very much above average accuracy off of these Chinese movements. The ST1901, the ST3600, which is in this previous video that I just did on this no-named watch I'm calling the Drift. And I've also got the Rudland, the F016. These are all great movements. And the Rudland Turbine Pilot was zeros across the board as well. So I've got to say this, like, don't have the huge hesitation around these Chinese movements. There's definitely the possibility. Those records exist. But what I'm saying is I just think the quality far exceeds the bad stuff out there. So to me, I'm willing to take the risk, and I'm even more willing to take the risk now that I've purchased a number of these watches that have Chinese knockoff type movements, whatever you want to call it. They're dang accurate. That's all I can say. Now, what about the legibility in Lume? Well, this is a dressy chronograph, so your legibility is not going to be as high as it would be for a dive watch or a field watch, but it's adequate, and it works really well with this watch. As a matter of fact, the hour hand and the minute hand, I can see this better than I can on my Sugess Daytona. The Sugess Daytona, I have a harder time just because the silver polished hands, the white background. Well, this has the silver polish. It has a little bit of polish on the hands, but it's on a blue, kind of a dark blue background. So the legibility is much better. Even the subdial hands at the 9 o'clock and the 3 o'clock, I can read those without my glasses right now. I can see it just fine. And of course, the chronograph second hand is really easy to see because of the red tip. You've got the counterbalance star at the other end. Legibility of this watch is great. The hour markers, I love the baton hour markers. They're very slender and sleek looking. But look at the 12 and the 6. There is something, and I think this was the first thing that I noticed when I saw this on the AliExpress website, was the number 12 and the number 6. I was like, that is cool. It reminds me of the Timex Marlin, and as far as font style goes. So to me, the 12 and the 6 really set the stage for just being a very classic retro-looking chronograph, but has these deep, rich colors on the dial. The balance of everything on here, the colors, the shape, the polish that's on this watch, the fume dial, the changing of colors. There's just so much good about this watch on the finishing side. So to me, everything about this watch screams 10 out of 10. So what about the Lume? Well, this is a dressy style watch. You're not really supposed to have much Lume at all on a dressy watch like this. It has Lume on here. It's fairly even. Here's the video of the Lume shot. It has 50 meters of water resistance, which is kind of typical for ST1901 movements. You have chronograph pushers on here, so don't push your luck on the water resistance of a Chinese watch with an ST1901 movement, okay? So what are the uses for this watch? I see this watch being a great office professional watch, semi-formal, formal occasions. This is a fantastic dress watch. What are the cons of this watch? I don't have any cons to this watch. I mean, you have a display case back where you get to see the ST1901 movement in action. Everything is polished really nicely on here. You have a great handset, very legible dial. You have the 12 and 6 for orientation, and the 12 and 6, you have the font type on there is fantastic. Very simple dial, keeps things kind of decluttered, if you ask me, on a chronograph. And the chronograph itself, the time totaler and also the running seconds hands, they're both very legible as far as I'm concerned as a dress watch goes. So to me, this entire watch has everything going for it. And accuracy is zeros and zeros. Like, that is just like the cherry on top. So what is the score for this watch? It is definitely a 10 out of 10. Highly recommend this watch. As far as the cost goes, it's on the lower end of cost in AliExpress. It's kind of that typical ST1901 cost. It's a variant of the 1963, and they just rebranded it with different case and different dial and everything. But this is outstanding. And again, you might get yourself into a very accurate ST1901 movement like I have. And I'm going to say this, I think the odds are going higher and higher that these things happen more frequently with the watches that I've experienced and what I've heard about online. So I'd love to hear what your comments are on this watch, on the 1901 movement. If you've had some good experiences with the 1901 movement, I think it's time we start talking about this, because I think the negative side gets the most publicity, but I'm not so sure frequency-wise that it's that frequent either. So Let's put that in the comments down below. What do you think of this watch? The design, the colors on here, I think it's just outstanding. Also, check out my webpage, realidealgear.com, for any of the reviewed watches that I don't hang on to, from limited editions all the way down to Casios and Casios matched up with flashlights, all kinds of cool stuff on there. So there you go. My name is Tim. This has been another Real Ideal Gear review, and we'll catch you next time.